Recessed lighting is awesome. So today I'm going to break down everything you should be looking for on your DIY install, give you some tips and tricks to save you time and money, and I'm going to show you a few new lighting features you've probably never seen before. This video is sponsored by Shopify. Now, 10 years ago, if you're going to install recessed lighting, you basically had one option, and that was one of these guys, which is a can light or pot light, which has basically been the standard in building for several decades now. Now, what you're going to find today is that there are a ton of different options out there, and there's not one of them that I'm going to say, yes, this is the right thing for everybody. But the first thing I want to talk about is form factor. First up, we have the good old-fashioned can light, and these guys have been around for a long time for a reason. But as you can see, it's quite large, and you need to have that headspace up above your ceiling to be able to do this. We'll talk a little bit about installation, but that's one of the biggest downsides of this guy is how big it is and how much room you need to connect it. Now, the other cool thing about this style light is that on the outside, you can choose from a lot of different trim options. So if you wanted to choose something like this guy here, you could have a nice big wide open mouth and have a large bulb in here that's going to put off a ton of light. But if you wanted something a little bit more discreet and you wanted to downsize, you could just change the trim ring, and now you could put in a much smaller light into the same fixture and it's going to look good. Now, before we jump to the wafer lights, there is a step in between, and this is basically if you already have recessed can lights, maybe you have incandescent bulbs, you want to upgrade to LEDs, but you don't want to mess with the different style trims and worrying about all that. There is one package that does it all, and this is a LED retrofit that is basically a little wafer light that goes into your existing can lights. So this is really cool because all you need is this little adapter here, and we have these little threads that will go right into the socket of the can light. You screw that in, and then you can just make the connection right here on the light, and you've got the trim and the LED light all installed together. And now that leads us to the LED wafer lights, and you can see why they call these things wafer lights. They are ultra thin, and the thing about these that works so awesome is basically they can fit anywhere because they are less than a ½ inch thick, so you could install them right on top of a joist if you had to. I'm going to show some installation of these later, so we'll get into that. Now, the big downside to these, obviously, are you get what you get. So this is the look that you have. Now, if you want to change the trim or anything like that, that is not going to work. Also, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but you can't change out the bulb if something goes bad. But the form factor is so small, they're so easy to work with, and they are very inexpensive. Now, hand in hand with the form factor of the light is the size of the light. And it's interesting because, like most guys will tell you, size doesn't matter. It kind of matters, but you'll see what I mean here in just a second. I'm going to start off with the canless lights, and typically there are 6 inches, then it goes down to 4 inches. We all know that 6 inches is better because who wouldn't want 6 inches? Because, you know, more light. But some people don't like the look of the 6-inch model versus the 4-inch model. And actually has been a trend going on to go smaller and smaller. So 6, 4, now actually the more popular ones are even 3-inch and 2-inch. So that's probably the first thing that you want to think about is, do you like the look of a larger light or do you like the look of a smaller light? Now, if you go with the smaller light, the downside is you're going to need more of them. But not all 6-inch lights are made the same. So this one from Halo that I got at Home Depot was 900 lumens, but this is an Insignor light that I got off of Amazon. These are the ones I installed in my last video. This has an output of 1050 lumens. In general, you're going to be around 1000 lumens, but it could be as low as maybe 850 or as high as 1100 lumens. So if we look at the Insignor at 1050 lumens versus the little Halo at 725, you need 3 of these little guys to equal just 2 of the larger ones. Now for a can light, this is just a 6-inch fixture. This doesn't have a lumen rating, obviously. And they do make a 4-inch fixture, but those are getting less and less common, actually. They're actually discontinuing the 4-inch one at my local Home Depot. But you can put any size light in this 6-inch fixture. But there are 2 main light styles that you would look at, and it's kind of like the 6-inch versus the 4-inch. And that would be the BR40, which is kind of a larger, more for a 6-inch can, or a BR30, which would again be for the smaller 4-inch. But you can put BR30s in a 6-inch canister. We actually have some of those in our house. So this BR40 bulb is 1080 lumens, and this BR30 is only 680 lumens. So the big takeaway on sizing is, yes, bigger is better. And if you have more output in your light, then you're going to need less of them. So it's kind of one of those decisions you can make on your own. Do you want to have a whole bunch of smaller ones, or do you want to have less of the larger ones? Now, probably the most confusing thing about recessed lighting is figuring out how many to install and how you should install them, the spacing and all of that. So let's break this down. Let's start off with how many should you install? Because you don't want to have a bunch of lights in there and it'd be like you're in a tanning booth, but also you don't want it to be, like you're in some gloomy dungeon. So what is the sweet spot? And luckily there is a good way to find that out, and it includes a little bit of math. So to start off with, basically what we're looking for is the amount of light that we want in the total room. And depending upon what type of room there is, you're going to want different amounts of light. And these are going to be measured in lumens. And a lumen is just the total light emitted by a light source. 1 lumen equals to about the light that you would get from a tiny little birthday candle about a foot away. Now, on the other hand, a 100-watt incandescent light bulb is about 1600 lumens. So you can kind of think about how that looks. So looking at different types of rooms, you're going to need different types of lumens. The spot in your house that is going to need the most amount of light is going to be in the kitchen. And in the kitchen, you want about 35 to 50 lumens per square foot because, you're cutting up food. You want to make sure you don't chop off a finger and put it in the mashed potatoes. In a dining room, about 30 to 40 lumens per square foot because you want to be able to see that finger that's sitting there in your mashed potatoes. Now for a bonus room or great room, 20 to 30 lumens per square foot because you might be doing some activities like playing board games, doing a puzzle, something like that. Or a bedroom or living room, you might be down to 10 to 20 lumens because you don't need a lot of direct light. And of course, in all these situations, you can have task-specific light if you want to read a book or something like that, have a lamp on a side table. So using those guidelines, all we need to do is figure out the size of the room. So let's just take, for example, a 14 by 14 room. So if you look at that, that is going to be 196 square feet. Maybe we just round up to 200. So if we multiply that 200 by our lumens per square foot, we can start to see the range of lumens that we'll need from the recessed lighting. So in the kitchen, we'd want about 7,000 to 10,000 lumens to light up that space. Whereas in a bedroom, we may only need 2,000 up to 4,000 lumens. So now all we have to do is match up the lumen rating of the fixtures that you've chosen or the light bulb, and then we can do the math to figure out how many of them we need. So for a kitchen, let's just say we're going after 8,000 lumens. So if we divide that by 1,050, which was the lumens from one of those 6-inch wafer lights, it would show that we would need 8 of those wafer lights to get into that ballpark of 8,000. It would actually be 8,400 lumens, or we could go all the way up to 10. So it gives you a little bit of leeway there depending upon what type of light it is, especially if you're using something smaller like a 4-inch or a 3-inch recessed light that might be down to 750 all the way down to maybe 500 lumens per each fixture. So for our 14 by 14 foot room, we could have 8 to 10 for a kitchen, but in a bedroom, we may only need 2 to 4. But of course, you're probably not just going to have 2 recessed lights in a room. And that gets to the next thing, which is spacing and layout. Now, of course, if you want to hit the easy button and you don't want to do all the math, you can go to some online calculators. I'll have one linked below here that I think is pretty cool. So you can go into the calculator, put in the dimensions of your room and what type of room it is, and make the selection, and it will do all the math for you and tell you how many that you need. But of course, I like math, so I would just do it myself. Now, spacing and layout was something I really struggled with when I did the first install on our lights in our front playroom that we did a few years back. I didn't know exactly how far off the wall to put it. I didn't want any shadows, and I had beam angles and all these things, and it was just a mess. But I can boil this down for you and make it real easy. Now, you may have heard the rule of thumb that you should have your lights spaced half the distance of the ceiling height. So if you had a standard 8-foot tall ceiling in a room, that you should have lights spaced every 4 feet. To me, that makes no sense because, first of all, that doesn't take into account any of the lumen ratings or how much light output each of those has. And we just figured out how many lights we needed based upon the lumen rating of the lights and how much we need in the room. So please do not use that as your estimate. You want to figure out how many lights you want in that room, and then you can decide how to space them. Now, the rule of thumb that I do like that actually works really well with the 6-inch can lights that I've had is you want to have the spacing in between lights be twice as much as the spacing between the first light and the wall. Typical guidance is 1.5 to 3 feet off of the wall, but whatever you choose, you want to have your next light be twice that number. Now, there's also another calculator that I found online, and it's really cool because you can also factor in the layout and design of your lights. Because, a square room is great and easy if you have 4 in the corners, but if you want to space things out a little bit differently, or you want to have 5 lights in the room, or maybe it's a rectangular room or a room that has a cutout on it, you can use all these designs, plug them in to this calculator, and it will tell you what the spacing should be. So play around with these calculators and lumens, and you can figure out a good layout and not just be shooting in the dark, if you know what I mean. Now, part of doing this research is because I'm going to be installing some recessed lighting in the front room over at the house at FTBT HQ2. It's super dark in that room, and I need some better lighting because I do a lot of work on the business there, and I spend a lot of time on the computer. And one of the biggest sites that I use to run our business is Shopify, the sponsor of today's video. Shopify is a commerce platform that millions of companies around the globe use to help sell their products. And we use Shopify to sell our digital woodworking plans for things like the shed that we built, furniture for the house, and any of our shop storage plans. Shopify also seamlessly integrates with a lot of the other business tools that we use, like our social media, our email, and the reviews for our products. One of my favorite integrations is with YouTube, and you can actually see that in action right now. If you check down below the video, you can see how we can sell our products right here with the video, and it makes it easier for our customers to see the products we have and check out easily. And you don't have to be a web developer to launch your shop either. They have an easy drag and drop editor that makes getting your products up and ready for sale quick and easy. So whether you're selling woodworking plans or products or basically anything else, I highly recommend Shopify. It has been a great resource for us. For a free trial, you can head over to shopify.com/fixthisbuildthat and see how they can help you grow your business. And a big thank you to Shopify for sponsoring today's video. Now, one thing I haven't talked about really is cost. And cost is always a huge driver whenever you're doing a home improvement project. So I run some of the numbers, and I think this is going to be an interesting way to look at it. So first of all, we need to think about the size of the lights and the lumens. So basically what I'm going to do is say we're looking for that 8,000 lumen lighting for a room. That's just going to help us level set on what we're going to buy. So if we wanted to get that 8,000 lumens, if we looked at the 6-inch Insignor at 1,050 lumens, we would need 8 lights to get there. Now, what I did to level everything is put everything at the cost of buying 12, because a lot of these you can only buy in 12 packs, especially the ones on Amazon. A lot of the ones in Home Depot you can only buy by the singles or maybe a 6-pack at most. And of course, with Amazon pricing, it can change from day to day, hour to hour. So this is what it was today. So the cost for 12 of the 6-inch Insignors was $65 right now, which is an amazing price. So if we bought 12 of those for 65 bucks, we would only need 8 of those lights and we would still have 4 left over. So if we went with the 6-inch Halo, we would need 9 lights to get 8,000 lumens, and that would cost us $164 for 12 of those. So almost 3 times as much as the Insignor and less output. Now for a 6-inch can with a BR40 light, that is even more expensive because you have to buy the can, which together 12 of those would get you $167. Plus you have to buy the BR40 light bulbs, which would be another 40 bucks, so $207 in total. So to level set this even more, I'm going to add another column in here that is dollars per 1,000 lumens. I think this really starts to paint the picture. So you can see $5.16 per 1,000 lumen for these Insignors, which is an awesome value. I've actually used these. These are the ones that I would recommend because I've used them in my house in several spots. I've not had any of them die on me, and I just think they're nice. Now for the Halo, it's going to be $15.19, and you could definitely argue that this might be a more high quality product and it might last longer. But for my tests so far, I've had the ones going for 4 years and they've been fine so far. Or if you want to go with the can lights, $18.25. So I've seen a lot of conversation online about, well, these are integrated circuit LEDs. So if one of these dies, you have to replace the whole fixture. And so what if you can't find them anymore? What if you have to change them all out? Well, I think if you actually look at the numbers and you see, you can buy 3 times as many of these as you could if you outfitted a can light with a bulb. And so yes, you could easily change a bulb on a can light, but you could just buy extras of these, and you're gonna have extras of these anyway because you only need 8 versus 9 of the others. And if you wanted to go the 4-inch route for that nice look of the smaller light, well, guess what? It's gonna cost you more. So if you check it out, the Insignor, the Halo, and the 4-inch can, they're all gonna cost more for that dollar per 1,000 lumens, and you're gonna need either 11 or 12 of these. So I'm going for the 6-inch lights. I think they look good. I think they're the best bang for the buck, and it's gonna be less install time because you just don't have to do as much work. All right, I've got a little mocked up wall and ceiling here, and we're gonna look at how these install and the ease of installation, as well as we'll see some downlight here and some of these features I've been talking about. But one thing that you may not know is that when they say a 6-inch LED light, that actually does not talk about the size from the width that you would see, nor the size of the light. Because if we look at this guy is about 6 and almost 3/4 of an inch wide, and then the light is just under 5 inches wide. So what's the 6-inch? Well, the 6-inch is actually the installation size. So we want to do a 6-inch hole up in the ceiling, and that's the same thing for the can lights as well. Now to put that hole up there, I got a large hole saw. This one's actually 6 3/8, and these do allow enough wiggle room. So if you use something like this is an abrasive versus one with teeth, so it's not going to catch. But the real star of the show is this guy. This guy is basically a dust catcher. So I can put this up in the drill, attach it in here, and all the dust goes in the bowl. I'll have links down below to these little installation items, but also all the different lights that I've been talking about today. So if you want to check them out further, you can go do that. All right, so we're gonna drill the first one over here. A hole lined up there. Should have made this taller than my head. All right. Woo. We got some dust up there, but by and large, everything is inside this bowl, which is pretty awesome. And we'll do another hole right over here so we can do some comparisons. All right. Oh no. We ran into a stud. Who would have put that there? So thinking about installation, this is why canless lights have become so popular. So with this big honking can light, yeah, if I've got a nice clear hole, I can just put the piece up there and rotate it into place. And it's still a little bit of a tight fit, honestly. Even at 6 3/8. There we go. Now I can put it in place, push up these little brackets here that are gonna hold against the drywall. I did get the can light up in here and locked into place, but that was not easy, and that was with just an open hole. Over here, where we've run into a ceiling joist, there's no way we'd be able to get a can light up in there, obviously, because there's just nowhere for it to go. And so that's where these wafers come into play, and they are so thin, and they're only a 1/2 inch thick, that we can go right in here, and this will actually be flush. So I can just put this guy in. Needless to say, this is way easier and faster than installing the can light, and you can do it right on top of a ceiling joist. So from that perspective, your options are basically wide open. If you're using the canless lights, you can put them anywhere you want to. If you're using a traditional can light, then you're gonna have to map out where your joists are in the ceiling and then combine that with that little spacing graph that you did to make sure that everything works out. Because if you run into a joist, you are out of luck with these guys and you just have to move it. Now, of course, you would want to wire these before you would actually get them seated in there. So let me show you what the wiring looks like. So I could just pull this down. These come out just as easy. And yes, I know this is underground wire. This is just what I had, so pay no attention to that. But in this box, check out the box for the Insignor. So this is actually not the lever type, but this is actually the push to connect, which is basically the same as the locking type, except it just locks on its own versus having the lever. So I can just reach up here. I'm going to connect green to ground, do white to neutral. And these do have 4 different slots here, so you could put an extra wire in. So if you're daisy chaining, you just put the next wire into the same of these locking nuts. Makes it super easy. Then you just run down to the next light. Now, of course, this would go through the punch out. I'm not going to do that because I'm not really installing it right here. But I'm just going to tuck this back up in there. I'm going to show you how to do the actual install in a future video where I'm putting those in FTBT HQ2. But for right now, demonstration purposes, we're just going to keep it like this. Then all we have to do is put in our little connector, and your wiring's done. You can put it in the ceiling. There we go. Now, I really wish I had have done this before I put this guy up here, because these things are actually a pain in the butt. I'm sure if you do this all the time, I look like a complete buffoon, but you know what? I don't do this all the time. Seriously, how do we get this thing out? Unfortunately, I am not playing this up for the camera. I don't know how to release this. That is not a great locking feature for taking it out. So make sure you get it exactly how you want it if you're installing these. All right, here we go. Whew. Okay. So to wire these guys up, it has a little box in here, just like I showed you before. And the nice things about these can lights is they do have the little push to lock as well. So it'll be nice and easy to wire these bad boys up. So that is a good thing if nothing else. But yeah, not a fan of these. Not a fan of the can. Not a can fan. All right. I got all the wiring hooked up, so I'm going to put this bad boy back up in here. So this larger BR40 bulb does not fit, it sticks out too much, but I actually found this guy. This is from EcoSmart, and it is actually much smaller. Let's see if this works, but it has an extendable part to it, which is pretty cool. So you can just pull up and actually adjust the light bulb versus adjusting the actual fixture up there. So let's put this all the way down and screw this in and see how it looks. Yeah, so that's a little bit more flush mount. I don't love the look of that at all, honestly. So I'd probably go to the smaller BR30. All right, the two bulbs I have in here right now, this is a 3000 Kelvin and this one is set to 3000 Kelvin. Let me turn the light on. So 3000 Kelvin is a nice soft white versus the 2700 Kelvin, which is warm white. But you can see what that looks like here. But now I'm gonna take this one out and change it to 5000 Kelvin, and you'll be able to see the difference between these two, hopefully pretty easily. All right, now I set this bulb to 5000 Kelvin, and here's the difference. You're definitely gonna get a much cooler light at the 5000 Kelvin, and it's nice to have it selectable because you can change it if you want it in different rooms. Now here's another tricky one that you might not know about, and that is, are LED lights dimmable? The answer is yes, but the dimmer matters. So I have a little dimmer right here, and this is the cheapest one that was at the store. This guy is 11 ton. I think this was like $8. Now it does say that it will go up to 150 watt LED bulbs, but in reality, when we try to use it, here's what happens. You turn it on. As I'm moving the dimmer switch, absolutely nothing happens. So you really want to make sure you get the right type of dimmer, like this Lutron one. This is an LED plus toggle dimmer. So this one was like 23 bucks, I think, and it says it delivers superior dimming for dimmable LEDs. And by superior, it means that it actually dims them versus flickering or just not doing anything. So I'm going to wire this one in here and show you how it's supposed to work. Now this Lutron dimmer is wired in, and there's some interesting things going on here though. I'll go ahead and dim this so you can see. So these ones from Insignor here, at the lowest level of dimmer, it actually stays on, whereas this other bulb goes off. So that is one thing about LEDs. Even if they are dimmable, they're going to react a little bit differently, but you want to get a high quality dimmer to make sure you're not getting any flickering or just it's not working at all. Now this might look the same, but I actually changed out this light, and you can see it's actually got a little bit thicker piece to it, and that's because this is one of those new features I was talking about. It's really pretty cool, and this is that same screw-in light bulb that also has the same style feature. I just didn't show you yet. So let's say it's time to watch a movie, and instead of dimming down the light, especially on that old Insignor that wouldn't go all the way down, you want just some mood lighting, just real, like maybe like a night light. Wouldn't that be cool? Look at that. This is so cool. It looks way better in person, but they have a feature where if you turn the light off and turn it back on the bulb, this has a nice little glowing ring around the outside, and on this wafer light, there is a row of LEDs around the exterior that is just a real warm. It's like the 2700 Kelvin, and it's not putting off much light. I want to install these so bad to see what it looks like in a room, because I think it would just be a great mood light for watching movies when you want just a little bit of light so you can move around, eat your popcorn. This is a totally cool new feature. I'm really excited about this. Now for me, I'm gonna go with the 6-inch canless lights, and I will just buy extra to make sure I have some replacements there, and it's still gonna be less than half the cost of going with something like a traditional can light. But I just love the look of recessed lighting. It's super easy to install, and if you're looking for that video on how to install it, I got it queued up for you right there. I'm Brad. Until next time, get out there and build something awesome.